Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. I have to do my ranking for the Friday the 13th movies today, and I've got all 12 that I've watched and I've reviewed in a collaboration with a couple of people, one being the guy who kicked all of this off, Stranger Grayson, and another one is Goosebumps Boy, and I put both of their channels in my description section so you can check them out. And we've been talking about these. We've all kind of varied on what we like, what we don't like, but we're fairly similar most of the time when it comes to the general opinions on a lot of this stuff. And of course, those guys are a little bit younger than me, I believe, so it's kind of interesting seeing their thoughts a lot of the time, too. And I think they've seen all of them at least once, so it's kind of curious to see what they say the second watch all these years later. I know Grayson specifically was not in love with a lot of them, so it was kind of interesting seeing what he had to say about certain things, how wish-washy he might feel about certain movies in the franchise that a lot of people feel either total hate to, or total love to, or just kind of wish-washy themselves. It was pretty fun. I enjoyed doing these videos with both of those guys. And I want to thank both of you guys, Stranger Grayson and Goosebumps Boy, for doing these videos with me. But here we are in the final one, the ranking video. Of course, I talked about in the future, I was going to do it this summer, but I kind of want to move on from some Friday the 13th stuff, so I might do this next summer. I haven't decided about covering these documentaries. His name was Jason and Crystal Lake Memories. This one's like 8 hours long, dude, or like 10 or something like that, and this is like an hour and a half to 2 hours. I just don't want to cover it right now. I'm thinking about it, but I haven't decided whether I'm going to do it this year or not. We'll see. But if you guys really, really want those reviews, let me know. I'll try to get to them if I can, but I'm not going to promise you anything. I don't want to get your hopes up or anything like that. Anyway, so I have all 12 movies ranked here. I do not have individual boxes or like VHS tapes or DVDs or anything for each of these movies. I do own all of them, but I don't have individual ones for every single movie, just so you know. So I can't make it interesting and be like, hey, this is for sure part number 5, this is number 6. No, I have like, some of them are dual box sets that many of you have seen that have like 5 and 6 collectively in one box. DVD cover, I don't know what to call it. Anyway, let's move along to my number 12 pick. This one is going to shock a lot of people. I promise you, by the way, that this list will not be your typical Friday the 13th fanboy list. It's not going to be. I love these movies very much. I grew up on them. I have wonderful, fond memories that I've covered in all of these reviews because I did like 20 and 30-minute reviews for almost all of these movies, sometimes longer. And I had a lot to say, and I wanted to really discuss a lot of my feelings and personal opinions about each of these films, but a lot of them I just don't connect to. Most of them I would say I love or have good memories with, enough to enjoy them each watch, but some have aged over time, some have changed over time, and there are some that people love that I fucking hate, if I'm being honest with you. My number 12 pick is going to be one that will be probably the most controversial picking on my list, aside from where my placement is on certain other things, but this one in particular I think is going to get me shot at, basically. If people see me out in the street and happen to come across this video that'll have like maybe 100 views. Anyway, so, my number 12 pick is part 3. We're off to a good start, aren't we? I'm already controversial. I have maybe liked this one time when I first saw it, and I have not liked it ever since. There are so many elements to part 3 that I fucking hate. Shelley is the biggest reason. Number 2, the fact that people defend this boring-ass 3D wannabe film that had the shittiest 3D. I used a fucking yo-yo thrown at my face. Yeah, that's a 3D movie. Oh yeah, that's a 3D movie. That's exactly what I wanted. That and Harold's pole getting put in my face. Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted out of a 3D Friday the 13th. None of the kills are really even like a 3D thing. That's the shittiest part of this 3D movie. But people use that defense, and then people use the other dumbass defense that I hated and I mocked in my review for it, that they say, well, that's a good one, because that's the one where Jason gets his hockey mask. Shut the fuck up. Stop saying that. Who gives a shit? Stop saying that. Just because that's where it made him iconic, even though the Baghead Jason was really iconic too, even though this made him iconic, does not mean that part 3 is a good movie. Stop saying that shit. It's annoying. It really annoys the fuck out of me when I hear asshats on the internet say that. You want to spot a fanboy, hear them say that. You will know immediately what they're saying. Even though I love the Friday the 13th community, a lot of fanboys will say that shit, and it annoys me. It really does. But anyway, part 3 I fucking hate. I think it's awful. It's boring. There's nothing happening here. There's this weird thing introduction that Jason could be a rapist. I don't like that either. That's fucking dumb. Not that it was fair to judge it at that time because it was the third of a current trilogy at that moment. It did not have all of these other Friday the 13th Jason-focused movies aside from Part 2 before it. I understand. I understand it's presentism to look back and say that, but fuck you, it was a bad idea. I think it was a bad idea. I think all of it was a bad idea in this movie, aside from the hockey mask thing. Everything else, I hated, especially the bikers. Fuck the bikers. They are just as bad as Shelley. It's awful. I hate Part 3. It deserves the bottom of my list. I'm sorry. There are other films people think are worst, like my next pick, and I understand where you're coming from, but I would rather watch the next pick than sit through this shit again. And I probably won't watch Part 3 for a very long time. I'm going to be honest with you, because every year I try to marathon the films, and I get to Part 3, and that is exactly where my dread comes in, where I just do not want to sit through the shit anymore. You know, it really hurts until I get to Part 4. But anyway. So, moving along to my number 11 pick. This one right here is a very controversial one. It is the last Jedi of this series, and that is Jason Goes to Hell, Part 9. The Final Friday. The second film in the series to be called The Final Something or Other, and it was not the other ending of something or other. Anyway, Final Friday, Jason Goes to Hell. It's fucking horrible. It tried to blend Friday the 13th with Evil Dead. It tried to make Jason into a Deadite. It tried to do a lot of things with Jason that I fucking despise and I think is abysmal. I think it was abysmal. The look of Jason when you see him in this movie, I said in my review, he looks like a piece of bubblegum. A fat piece of bubblegum with a hockey mask that somehow melted itself into the piece of bubblegum. It's ugly. It's stupid looking. I feel bad for Kane Hodder because of how he was treated here. Adam Marcus directed and wrote this, or just directed it, something like that. He is the same clown, the same fucking clown, who attaches himself to things like Rian Johnson and ruins them every single time. I said it before, I'll say it again. This is the last Jedi of Friday the 13th. It killed the series from 1993 when this movie came out all the way to 2001. To 2001 when not Freddy vs. Jason, when Jason X came out. They were trying to make Freddy vs. Jason. They were struggling behind the scenes trying to make it, but they had to put out Jason X in the meantime. From 1993 to 2001, 8 goddamn years that this movie killed the series for. I don't care what they were doing in post-production or any kind of pre-production for that matter on other projects. It doesn't matter. Jason Goes to Hell killed the series for a long time, almost a whole decade. And it had been around for like a decade and a half at that point, you know, almost. And they had made so much money. And then this took a shit on everybody because of what Sean S. Cunningham hated about Jason and hated about the fans and the hockey mask and everything. It was a bad idea, this body-hopping bullshit story. And to me, it's one of the worst Fridays ever. But at least it has good kills in it, unlike Part 3. Part 3's kills suck ass, like a lot of the early Friday the 13th before Part 4. But this, to me, has some of the best kills in the franchise, and I will say that. The gore effects, the effects in general, look really good, and I really like it. That is the only good thing about this movie. Everything else is a terrible tragedy to have to watch, and I hate it more every time I watch it, theatrical or unrated. Maybe the unrated's better about the blood, I don't know, but that is the one I watched for my reviews. Fuck this movie, it's bad too. Alright, let's move on to my number 10 pick. This one is also going to be controversial. I have a lot of memories with this one. It's the first one I ever saw, as far as I know. As far as I remember. I remember watching this with my mom, and I really enjoyed it. The ending got me. All kinds of cool stuff. It has some great music. It's a very relaxing movie. I said that as well. That might cue off to some of my viewers what I'm talking about. But my current number 10 pick. Mind you, these things change around all the time in my head, but this is what I truly settled on having to make this ranking video. And that is the OG Friday the 13th, the 1980 original movie. Right here, of course, in my 2-pack, but still. I am sorry, but this movie is kind of boring. There are moments of Alice just walking around doing shit forever, like touching a guitar and making coffee and looking out the window. A couple of times, as a matter of fact. There are things like that that just... Why? Why? I understand it's the first film. I understand. But why? But why? It's boring sometimes, but it is relaxing, but it is boring. Especially when it starts raining, it gets really relaxing, in my opinion. But this movie is not what people remember it being, in my opinion. If you were very nostalgic for it, I understand. I get that. I'm a very sentimental, nostalgic person myself. I get where you're coming from. All I'm saying is, the movie did not age extremely well. And I said that in my review as well. I'm not afraid to say that. It didn't age like Part 2 aged. Part 2 is incredible. I still stand by that. That's a really good flick. Or at least mostly positive. The ending's a little rough, but you know what I mean. But this first original film, it's special. The Harry Manfredini music is really great, especially in the closing of the film. Not really in the closing, but like the credits song, the boat song, I love that stuff. It's beautiful, beautiful music with the synth added to it. It's incredible. Some of the most striking visual stuff are from those moments in this film, and Harry Manfredini's music makes it even better. But watching this for the first time ever was so wonderful back in the day. I loved watching this on TV with my mom, and again, I bought a copy, and I've watched it over and over again. That's probably my most viewed Friday the 13th film, aside from maybe Part 7? Maybe? I don't really know. But the other ones I've watched a bunch of times, but those two, for whatever reason, I've seen the most. Maybe they were on TV the most, I don't know. But that was kind of my my case once upon a time. Or at least as of now. But Part 1, it's not great, in my opinion. Alright, moving along to my next pick. This one is going to be kind of justified where it is, but people are probably going to be mad that 1 and 3 are underneath it. A lot of people will probably put this pretty close to the bottom. But I have a lot of nostalgia for it. I really enjoy this. It has good moments in it, but it's a fucking bad movie. Like a really bad movie. But like a fun-to-watch bad movie. It knew what it was, but it went a little too far. And technically in the timeline at the current moment, aside from the remake, this is like the final timeline Jason movie from the OG movies. That is 2001's Jason X. What is this? What is this? Taking Jason to space, based on the rumor that I still think was bullshit, that John Carpenter wanted to take Michael Myers into space. And I'm convinced it was bullshit, and I'm convinced that was a rumor to try to throw off the Friday the 13th people, because to this day, they seem to try to do whatever Halloween did. The OG Friday the 13th was a ripoff of the original Halloween, but like in a good way, you know? And then we had Jason Voorhees, who I would argue is a better villain than Michael Myers. I'm sorry. I like a lot of the Halloween films more, I think, but Friday the 13th can be more fun, you know? Like, they have a better lack of suspense, but more fun. Like, the kills and everything can be way more fun to watch in Friday the 13th movies. But they typically copy those films. You know, we had a remake because of the Halloween remake. We had the space film because of the rumored space Michael Myers movie. We will probably eventually get a new Friday sequel at some point. I know they're talking about the TV series and shit that I think is going to suck ass. But, like, if we get, like, a new movie, it would not surprise me if we just ignore all of the sequels and make a direct sequel to the original film. That would not surprise me in the least, if I'm being honest with you. Or at least ignore a bunch of films and make a sequel to, like, Part 4. That's probably what will happen if we ever get another Friday the 13th film, because for whatever reason, they did not want to make a sequel to the remake from 2009. That I think is extremely underrated, and unfairly so. But it's a shame, in my opinion. But we get things like this that were clearly, in my opinion, it's a rights-holding film, like my boy Horror Free-For-All said. And it's also, at the same time, to me, just a clear-cut, we're going to try to beat Carpenter to his idea. That's what I take it as. And it has fun doing that, but some of the acting is so cringe in this movie that it's hard to watch sometimes. It's hard to sit through that because of how it's almost like watching a porno sometimes. And it's weird. It's very sleazy, and like my boy Horror Free-For-All once again said, it's probably the next to sleaziest aside from the remake and Part 5. And I kind of like that, but I kind of don't. But I kind of like it, you know? And I have so many memories of showing my cousin this movie for the first time ever on TV. He had never seen a Friday the 13th film. I showed him this, and then Freddy vs. Jason came on immediately after that on TV. I think it was the AMC channel or maybe the Sci-Fi channel. But I showed him both, and he loved them. He loved them. We laughed and laughed and laughed over this movie in particular. I have my good memories with it, but the movie itself does not have many benefits aside from the kills. And I like the look of regular Jason. This one right here, before he becomes what we call Uber Jason, so German Jason. I don't like the Uber Jason thing. I think the older I get, the shittier and cheaper it looks. And this is the final performance of Kane Hodder playing Jason 2, which is, it's kind of a sad thing, but again, Part 9 was so horrible. Who cares? Who cares is my opinion on that. Moving along to my number 8 pick. That happens to be Part 8 for number 8. I have my 2-box set here. Jason Takes Manhattan is my number 8 pick. This movie is fucking rough. It was the final Paramount movie, obviously. And it has some cool things in it. I think it has some stuff that kind of makes it a meh movie for me. Something that's underrated, but also overhated at the same time. It's not a good movie, but it's Jason cannon fodder of getting on a boat, somehow getting from Camp Crystal Lake into Manhattan. They didn't have to fly to do that. Somehow it was connected, even though it's geographically impossible, you know. But somehow they get over to Manhattan at some point. Most of the film, for the hour and 40 minutes it's on, you know, screen, it's like an hour of being on the boat traveling, and then 40 minutes of actually being in New York City or wherever they shot to make it NYC. And Jason's kills are super fun in this movie. I love that stuff. I love the focus on his supernatural abilities. I like all of that stuff. But, like, the main chick in the film that's having these weird visions and stuff about Jason when he was a boy and drowning in the water, and she had a drowning experience too, the weird pompous teacher, all of this shit culminates into this weird movie that I'm not sure how I feel about it. It's a very, very mixed bag, but I think it's extremely overhated in a way that's not fair. I understand the hate on something like Jason Goes to Hell. I understand the hate on something like Jason X. I do not understand it for Part 8. Part 8 is a mess. The ending is fucking terrible. Don't get me wrong. But the kills and stuff, like with the sauna rock, for example, that was great. That was brutal to watch, dude. I will stand by the fact that's one of the best kills in the series. There's some really cool stuff in this movie, and I think it doesn't deserve all of the anger it gets. Yeah, it's not really what we want from Friday the 13th, but at least it tried something new, having Jason on a boat. Not that I think series should go out of their way to do something like that, like it tried to do here. Literally taking Jason to a massively, you know, populated city and not having him kill more than like 3 or 4 people is a fucking mistake. I think we can all agree with that. I forgot to say that in my review when I recorded it, but I think it's a massive issue, you know? Anyway, let's move along to my next pick. My number 7 here might be controversial as well because of the placement of it as well. It's a good film. It's a really good film. A great film, even, as I said a few moments ago. That is Part 2. Yes, Friday the 13th Part 2 is underneath Part 7 on my list. I know people are going to be mad about that, but this is a good film. The only thing missing from it for me is the ending. Is very, very lackluster for me. And I know I didn't rate all of these at like the same level. Some of them very barely got to like a 4 out of 5 stars, or a 5 out of 5, or whatever, if I did give them a 5 out of 5. A lot of them were like a 3 out of 5, but I have fun watching them. Now, my ranking videos typically are based on how much fun I had, and what I view something as, with everything taken into account. My memories, my bias, my enjoyment, the quality of the filmmaking, the acting, all of that stuff. All of it is culminated into what I consider the worst to best, but also what would I enjoy to go back right now and watch in order. That's kind of how I rank everything up. And Part 2 for me is a really great flick. It really is, aside from the shitty ending that just kind of ends. You know, it's not even a cliffhanger. It just kind of happens off screen. To me, that's a letdown. And Part 2, as good as it is, as good as Baghead Jason is, I love all of that stuff. I'm glad that they brought Baghead back for the remake. That is all cool to me. And yet, I still like Part 7 more. I do. I'm sorry it's controversial, but I do. I think it's a better flick to watch for my personal taste. The first ever Kane Hodder film, I believe. And I enjoy that. I like that a lot. I think it's a really fun watch. But Part 2 has something missing in there, but I also love, like, Jenny. Jenny is probably one of my favorite Friday the 13th final girls. I think that she is just a sweetheart. She's so down-to-earth and humble, and I just love that chick. You can't help but root for her, and I root for her more than I rooted for Alice watching Part 1 over and over again over the years. And I didn't even see Part 2 that often. I think I didn't even see it till I was, like, 17, 16, somewhere in there, maybe 15. I saw it on TV at one point because I had never seen the film, or I rented it or something. I can't remember. But I realized at some point there were so many Friday films I hadn't seen, like Jason Goes to Hell. And I finally watched Part 2, and man, it was good. It was such a surprisingly creepy, scary film. It's probably the scariest of the series, if I'm being honest with you. The Part 2 for me lands right at there at number 7 on my list. I keep forgetting where I'm at. Alright, now, my number 6 pick. We're almost in the top 5, but not yet. My number 6 pick is number 7, The New Blood. Or is it A New Blood? The New Blood is what it says. A New Beginning and The New Blood throw me off. I always expect the A and the to be switched out on the two every single time I talk about them in my reviews, so forgive me if I get the titles wrong on any of these that I talk about. Anyway, The New Blood is part 7, and to me this is really where Friday hit, and aside from part 6, but kind of mainly here, is where it hits that 1980s feel. The music and everything really captivated that in part 6, but part 7 feels like a 1980s slasher to me. I love the look of Jason in this film. It might be my favorite look of Jason in all of the series. The kills are cool. The problem is the MPAA neutered the fucking movie, and there is no blood at all in the film. At all. But it's still enjoyable to watch. I like this cast of kids. I like how eccentric and weird they are. I like the Carrie versus Jason nature of the movie, of having a chick that has telekinetic powers. She can set things on fire. She can bring people back to life and shit. This story of her in therapy, going to Camp Crystal Lake or wherever the fuck this lake is that she's staying at, to go there to deal with her therapist and her mom, to get over her trauma of killing her dad, basically, when she was a kid with her telekinetic abilities, and collapsing a dock that he was standing on. That stuff is kind of fun. I enjoyed it. It's not like it's the best acted movie ever. It's not that it's the best written movie ever. It's just I enjoy these characters and these situations a lot. And I really like the way it's shot, too. I think it's a fun-looking movie. I just wish the blood was back in the film. I think it would have been so much better as a film if the gore had been added in. And to this day, where all that footage is lost, they can't do it. As far as I know, I think the footage is lost. It might be in the Camp Crystal Lake Memories documentary, I don't know. But they talked about it there. And I felt bad for the people who made this movie, because people hate it, and I don't understand why. The fans aren't as harsh on this as they are something like Part 8, with Jason taking Manhattan. But this one does not have its fans, and I feel bad for the movie because of that, but I really enjoy it. I think it's a good flick. Kane Hodder's first performance as Jason, and I think it's really good. To me, it's a nice follow-up to something like Part 6 and how great Part 6 is. It's probably the best Friday film ever, possibly. We'll see what my ranking says about that. But I really, really love what they did with this film, and I wish the gore had been in it. I really think it could have benefited so much from that if it had just been complete, if it had just been the actual director's movie and not the fucking MPAA version that we got. It's such a mess, and it's so sad that that's the case. But that's a good flick, in my opinion. Moving along to my number 5 pick. Yeah, we're in the top 5 now. I'm going to have to speed it up, too, because I think my camera's going to die here soon. So, my number 5 pick on my list is going to be a little controversial that it's as low as it is underneath a few other films. You've noticed the remake has not been listed yet. By the way, how did Halloween get to 13 films before Friday the 13th? I know it's been around longer, but really? Anyway, if we get a Friday the 13th new movie, it needs to be special. It needs to be really special to hit the 13th Friday the 13th movie. It has to be a special movie. Don't ruin it. Anyway, my number 5 pick is one that is very, very good. Very well made, amazing effects. Tom Savini himself came back to make it, which probably tipped my hat. That is Part 4, the final chapter, as it's called. The first time out of the 2 or so times that we tried to do this and call something the final something, and then we didn't make it the final something. This was originally going to be the end of the series. It was the 4th film, as I said, and it's really solid. It's really solid, and to me, out of the first 4 movies, this is the best. Easily. Easily, this is the best out of those first 4. It's the most well-made, the most well-shot, the best budget behind it, I think. It's beautiful. Tom Savini's effects, the gore, all of that stuff are so brutal and horrific and fantastic. Crispin Glover is in this from Back to the Future. He's incredible. The Crispin Glover dance is timeless. It's timeless. It's like the Jitterbug commercials on the TV. It's fucking timeless, dude. Teddy, I like him a whole lot, too. I just really, really dig this flick. It's a good movie. It really knows what Friday was by this point, and it really did so much better going from Part 3, that fucking turd, to this movie. It's great. The mask looks better than it's ever looked at this point. It looks better than most of the films, as a matter of fact. Even this poster here has some of the best Friday poster stuff ever. Friday the 13th, the final chapter, is in my top 5. At least you can give me that. But there are other films that I like more than it. It's a beautiful, well-made movie. But there are other things that I think are for sure better for me. Now, we go on to my number 4 pick. This one is one that people despise, dude. My comment section was filled up with so much love for it, and I was really thankful for that, because I think people are coming around to this movie and realizing how overhated it is, and that is the remake from 2009. My number 4 pick is the 2009 movie. I really, really enjoy this. It's not perfect. It has a lot of flaws. A lot of weird-ass flaws, too, that could have been fixed on easy things to fix. It's kind of like Death Proof, where you get like halfway through the film and then you restart all over again. It's kind of that situation, but dude, this is so good. I saw it on premiere weekend. I have a Fangoria magazine I showed in my review that was basically the only Fangoria I've ever bought, and I loved it. It was a good time for horror at that time. We had a Halloween remake a couple of years later. This is the same year as the 2009 Halloween 2 from Rob Zombie that I still love to this day. And then the next year, we had the Nightmare on Elm Street remake to look forward to, too. When the trailers came out for this movie, as I said in my review, I watched them over and over and over again because of how excited I was and how amazing Jason looks. Derek Mears played Jason in this film. He's a good actor. He's a UFC fighter. Or at least he was cage fighting, something like that. Maybe not even UFC, that's official stuff, but you know what I mean. Derek Mears plays Jason here, and he is absolutely brutal. He is terrifying. I love him. He is the best Jason, in my opinion. Kicks the shit out of Kane Hodder, in my opinion. He is so good here, dude. And he's so tall, and like the look of Jason, you don't get to see his face or anything, but the look with the mask and the kind of long jacket coat thing, I love it. It's also like a mishmash of the original 4 movies put into one big movie, as my boy Horror Free-For-All keeps saying in his videos, and I really think he nailed that right on the head. I really do. That is exactly what this movie is, and I think it's so good for that. Man, is it watchable. It's super enjoyable. I love the jokes in here. I think the humor between the Asian guy and the black guy, they are so fun. I love the performers there. You have the guy that plays Trent from the Transformers 2007 movie with Shia LaBeouf. He plays such a great dickhead that I just love him. You have Jared Padalecki from Supernatural, who's really, really good here looking for his sister. You have Danielle Panabaker from Disney Channel that's in this too. There are so many good people in this movie. It's so much good acting that I just love it. Not that the acting's always great, but the improv humor kind of throws a lot of this movie off for me. And it's a little bit more stoner than I expected, surprisingly enough. You know, pot's always been a part of Friday the 13th as a series, but it surprised me what they did with that in this movie and the potheads they had in it. It's shocking sometimes with how great Jason is at setting up traps. He's holding a girl hostage because she looks like his mom. I love all of these things. I think all of these are great traits, and how smart Jason is, even if he does run, which everybody hated. People bitched about that back in the day. The normies who don't even know these movies bitched about that back in the day over the trailer when it came out. Now, those people are different from somebody like my boy Horror Free-For-All. Free-For-All is always saying that he just doesn't like a Jason who runs, and I understand that. That's a fair criticism. That's a fair criticism. He isn't by no means a normie. He's a very smart guy and a good hardcore fan that I watch a lot of his content. But the other normies out there, the typical people who saw each of these movies one time in the 80s, who have memories about going to the movies and talking with their friends the whole fucking time instead of watching the shit and being obsessed with it like the rest of us, those same normies got on those trailers, and you could probably still go back to them to this day from New Line Cinema or whoever, and look at those commercial or comments in those videos. And you could probably see people bitching at that time about a running Jason not ever being done in the movies and how stupid they thought that was. Shut the fuck up. Shut up. If you don't like it, that's one thing. Stop saying it never happened. That's a lie. You're fucking wrong. Anyway, part 3, your Lord and Savior part 3. He was fucking running at the end of the movie. Anyway, Friday the 13th, the 2009 remake, is my number 4 pick. My phone turned itself off. I gotta turn it back on really quick. As in, like, just turn the screen back on. Unlock it. I'm sorry, I'm a boomer. Moving on to my number 3 pick. Let me take a taste of my drink really quick. My water. Because I am thirsty, dude. I've recorded like 2 half-an-hour videos back-to-back. And it's rough. Alright. My number 3 pick is one that I thought for sure would be at the top. I'm glad it's in my top 3. But the more I weighed this out against the other couple of options I haven't posted about yet, the more I was like, you know, this one's a little bit more poorly well made compared to those two. It's one of my favorites. It's probably one of the best ever. of Friday the 13th, and it's probably the most controversial one out of all of these, even compared to like Jason Goes to Hell. A lot of fans hate this movie for unfair reasons that I don't want to spoil. I've spoiled a lot of these movies as I did this ranking video, but a lot of people watching a ranking video probably already know what I'm going to say. They probably do. But for me, this is one that I really enjoy. I have good memories about it watching it with my grandfather one day. It was raining outside. We watched it on AMC Horror Fest, I believe. And it was such a shockingly different movie. And to this day, I still think it's one of the best. And my number 3 pick is Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning. Yeah, I know. I know what you're going to say. I know what you're saying down in the comments section, possibly, if you're watching this and decided to comment. Anyway, A New Beginning is one that it's so fucking sleazy. I love it. It's so sleazy in a good way. It's fun to watch. The humor, the jokes and stuff are great. It's kind of a black comedy in a different way, like with the kind of style of humor and whatever. And then you have characters in this movie too that I love. Pam, to me, is like the hottest chick ever in these movies. I don't know what it is about her, but I love Pam. And then you have some of the other characters in here too. You follow Tommy Jarvis. It's not Corey Feldman, but it's another guy. He's okay. He tries. And then you have, like, Reggie. I fucking love Reggie. I like his brother, too, that he goes and visits at one point. I like their grandfather, as a matter of fact, that Reggie stays with at the camp that they're working at. I love this. The idea of a group of people that are troubled kids and teens that are being kind of rehabilitated to be reintroduced into society after they kind of get to where the company thinks they need to be at as people. I love all of that. And then the murders start up, and it's Jason Voorhees after a horrible murder by one patient who killed another guy. And it's horrific. And the gore in it, when it's there, it's really good. I really enjoy this. Part 5 is so underrated, and I understand why people don't like it because of the reveal and the twist at the end of the film. I get that. But personally, I love it. And Pam, oh my god, she makes it so worthwhile. This is a good flick. I don't understand what people are saying. I don't understand where people could hate this aside from being a fanboy or a normie. Usually I hear the shit that people say about this film from normies who don't really even like these films to begin with. They're just snobs a lot of the time. And I see that a lot on the internet. I've always seen that on the internet too, when I realized, hey, there are people talking about things like Star Wars and Friday the 13th on the internet. I didn't know what the internet was when I was a kid. When we finally got a computer in my house, it was like 2003, and I think I was like 9, I want to say. Yeah, about 9. Maybe it was 2002, but I was about 8 or 9 when we first got our first computer at the house, back when my parents were still together. And I remember getting online and finding out people were talking about Friday the 13th and different things like that. And it was such a fun time, dude. It was such a fun time to hear people discuss things like that. But A New Beginning always got shat on every time I looked at anything, and it was bullshit. It's bullshit. Stop it. It's a good movie. Alright, this one here, I have inside of another box set. I do not have it right here in front of me, like by itself. I might have a VHS tape that I've packed up for moving, because we're moving soon. This one here is something that I love deeply. It's one that came out, well, it was it was around the time that I was having a hard time in my life that I just mentioned. My parents had split up in about 2004, and this movie came out, and I remember the commercials for this being on TV and scaring the shit out of me, and that is 2004, I believe, or 2003. 2004, I'm pretty sure, is when this came out, because they separated in 2004. That is Freddy vs. Jason. It's in a Nightmare on Elm Street box set. I already reviewed it for the channel way back when, like a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, and it was not part of this marathon I just did. But I love Freddy vs. Jason. I've stood by the fact, yeah, it has a lot of CGI in it, but it is so fun seeing Jason and Freddy throw down in the finale of this film, watching how we build to that, watching how Freddy tries to use Jason as a pawn in his chess game to kill kids, to get people to be afraid of him again. That stuff is a blast. I love it. And the jokes, dude. The jokes in this movie are so good. One of my favorite things that I had never even realized until yesterday, mind you. Until yesterday. Never picked up on this pun. There's a moment in here where Freddy burns somebody's back. Like their actual back. Burns it up, makes it all boily and everything. Grayson, on his video, Stranger Grayson, who I've been doing the collabs with, made mention of this, and it finally clicked the fucking joke they were going for. Freddy is trying to tell people that he is back, and he literally writes on the back of this man's back, Freddy's back. How have I seen this movie all of the billions of times that I have since it came out, and since my mom showed it to me on TV, and then I watched it over and over again on DVD and VHS? How in the fuck did I not realize that that joke was about Freddy's back, and it was like a pun, like, this is Freddy's back, but Freddy's also coming back? Like, I never realized that. I don't know why it never clicked until yesterday when I was listening to Stranger Grayson's review, but dude, this movie, I pick up on more things every time I watch it. It's so filled with so much shit. I love it. And Ronnie Yu wasn't even a fan of these original movies, either series, so he didn't really talk about anything having to do with them, or even view them again, from what I understand, before he made Freddy vs. Jason. The choices he made for Freddy vs. Jason were great, in my opinion. I think they really did a great job figuring out how to maintain these two iconic villains that are basically like if you made a a Jason versus... Fuck, I keep getting the titles wrong. If you made a Frankenstein versus Dracula movie, where those are two of the biggest villains ever, once upon a time, if you made something like that with Boris Karloff, with Bela Lugosi, that's what you were looking at with this. That's the kind of thing, how iconic these two villains had become by this time, in 2004, that we had to do something special. And we had finished off both series with something like New Nightmare, which I think sucks. The older I've gotten, the less I like it. And then you had, what's the other thing? Jason X, 3 years before this. Freddy vs. Jason is so much fun to watch. I don't understand how anybody could watch this and not love it. I really do. I even have a friend. I want to tell a small story really quick that I think I forgot in my review years ago, but I don't know. I want to cover it now if I haven't in the past. I have a friend who is a very dedicated Christian, well, I'm not a dedicated Christian, but I am a Christian nonetheless. I don't do what I should do, but, I love, God, and I love Christ, and whatever. But he's like that too, but he's very dedicated. And when we were growing up, he only saw maybe 2 horror films the entire time that we were hanging out and stuff. We went to the theaters to see the Halloween remake in 2007 together with my mom, which was brutal. Scarred the shit out of the guy for the rest of his life. He still talks about that when we hang out. Every once in a while we'll get to. But we still talk about that, and we still talk about when he saw Freddy vs. Jason. He saw it somewhere on the... Do you remember back in the day, they would put movies on the PSP? Like, you could buy the disc and stuff, not just a game, but you could buy, like, a PSP movie. Like, they would come out, like, you would have a release that would be like Blu-ray, DVD, still VHS, and then fucking PSP. And you could buy them like that. He would buy the PSP movies sometimes. He would buy, like, Are We There Yet? I think is the Ice Cube film. Whatever that movie is. He bought, like, that, and he bought Freddy vs. Jason at one point, because he knew I was a big horror guy. And I guess he had seen a clip, he said, online that said it was kind of funny. And he wanted to see it, because he realized it wasn't just horror, it was a horror comedy, which I had tried to tell him, but not really explain the best over the years that that's what horror that I liked, like slasher stuff, typically was. It wasn't just scary, it was kind of funny, too. And I told him about that, and, he found this PSP disc, whatever, he bought it, and those are the only 2 horror films that boy has ever seen to this day, and he is almost 30 years old. Next year, he'll be 30. And to this day, TC, my friend, still has not seen anything else but Halloween 2007 and this, Freddy vs. Jason. He loves Freddy vs. Jason. He still quotes it to this day, and he's mainly seen it probably 7 or 8 times, that he watched it on PSP over and over and over again, dude. He loved this movie. But it's because of how good the comedy works. You do not have to be a Freddy fan or a Jason fan to go in this understanding who they are, what their abilities are, aside from the weird fear of Jason being afraid of water in this movie. Where the fuck did that come from? It's in this movie, though. But you can go into this and have such a good time. It's really not that scary, really not that many jump scares or anything, but it is funny, and it is fucking quotable, too. It's a good flick, and it has stood the test of time over the last 20 years, in my opinion. No matter what anybody says, I think it deserves the number two spot on my list of the Nightmare on Elm Street and Freddy vs. Jason, or just Jason movies, I guess. It's a great flick, nonetheless. I think it was fairly high up, too, on my Nightmare on Elm Street list when I did that ranking. So, yeah. Alright, now we're at the cliche. And now we're at the cliche that a lot of people typically go to. My number 1 pick for Friday the 13th list is Part 6. Jason Lives. The one that had to recover from Part 5, A New Beginning, and how people hated the ending of it so much. This brought back things like Tommy Jarvis. You have Thom Matthews. I'm joking, his name is Tom Matthews, playing Tommy this time around. This film is directed by Tom McLaughlin. and he wanted to do something really special. This is such a great flick. Everything about it's pretty much perfect. It's so much fun to watch. It has maybe one moment that may be a little dry, but outside of that, the pacing on it is killer, dude. It just flies by. It's so much fun to watch. It's insane. It's over the top. It's crazy. It's wild. Everything you could want out of a Jason Voorhees film are in this movie. The kills are great. The pacing and fun and humor, extremely, especially the humor, is better than it had ever been. And to this day, aside from Freddy vs. Jason, it's some of the best humor that has ever been in the series. Ever. It's iconic for a reason. Jason Lives is so much fun. It's so much fun to watch, dude. I love it. There's nothing really to be said that hasn't been said already. I think that this is probably the best Friday the 13th film we'll ever get. And it's weird, because when I was growing up, I didn't think that about this movie. As good as I thought it was just another Friday the 13th movie to me. But the older I get, the more I can see the amount of passion put into this film by Tom McLoughlin, who sadly didn't do much more, aside from, like, maybe a random episode of, like, ER, or like a soap opera or something. Tom McLoughlin is so talented, he deserved more. I know he did an episode, or maybe even the first episode possibly, for the Nightmare on Elm Street Freddy's Nightmares show. That show fucking sucks. I never could finish it. But he did things with horror, with this movie and how iconic it is, that I am shocked that this man did not have a better career after making this movie. Jason Lives is extremely fun, extremely insane and wild, and just everything you could possibly want from Friday the 13th. And Jason, specifically. It brought Jason back as a zombie. And now he has all these powers, like he's super strong. He can punch your heart through your body. Like, it's just fun. I love that about it. I think it really knows what it's doing, and it is fun. And that's really all it needed to be in Friday the 13th or anything. But by the time we hit the mid-80s when this came out, this really had to accomplish a new goal that the first 5 had not. And I think 5 gets close, but this film really, really lands on what it wants to do and how much fun it can have. And that's great. I love that about it. When it comes to my number 1 pick, it deserves to be Part 6. Part 6 is... it's so incredible, it deserves this spot. It can't possibly be anything less. When I look at the quality of the filmmaking compared to everything, including Freddy vs. Jason or the remake or any of that stuff that even has a higher budget than what this had back when it was released, this is a better movie, in my opinion. It's everything about the 1980s that I love with the music and everything. It just works so well. It's great. Do not miss out on any of these. If you're going to watch any of them, watch Part 5, Part 6, the remake. Watch the stuff like that, Freddy vs. Jason, the stuff that are like my top 5. Watch those movies. Those are, to me, the best of the series. And Part 2 is really good, too, even though it's not in the top 5. Anyway, with all that being said, that is my ranking for all of the Friday the 13th films. Man, what a series. What a series. This was a lot of reviews to do, and I'm realizing more and more that these long movie series reviews are quite an undertaking, because eventually you get tired when you get to the bad series of movies, or the bad parts of the series of movies. Anyway, I want to thank you first and foremost for watching this video. I want to thank you also if you go and check out my 2 boys, Stranger Grayson and Goosebumps Boy, in the description once again, in case you want to find out anything about their channels. Really good content creators, really enjoy their videos. And thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to me ramble for so long about all 12 of these movies and my opinion on the pieces of them and where they land for me from worst to best. Yeah, that's all I have to say. So, thank you all for watching. I need to go relax my voice because it's fucked up now after recording so much. It's been like over an hour of recording today, so I'm a little jacked up. I need to go sit down, play some Star Wars Episode 1 Pod Racer on Switch, and I need to drink some water and maybe have lunch. Maybe. Anyway, so what do you guys think about all of these movies? What are your rankings? I'd love to see all that down in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think I fucked up on. What you think are my worst picks, my best picks, all of that. I'd love to hear your trashings down in the comment section down below. And I can't wait to see the Part 3 fanboys show up eventually in the future and tell me I'm an asshat and a clown for having Part 3 at the bottom of the list. But fuck you, it's my list. Anyway, thank you guys. God bless you guys. Goodbye.